Hi, this is Ben Wagner covering the Blue Jays for Sportsnet, and this is the Walk-Off Podcast with Scott and Adam. Enjoy.
It's the Walk-Off with Scott Belford and Adam Mack.
This ball is crushed.
All right, so excited to be joined by today's guest, Toronto Blue Jays insider, Sportsnet's Ben Wagner. Welcome to the Walk-Off, man. Thanks so much for taking the time.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys.
Absolutely. We're excited to chat with you, man. And I just wanted to mention, too, off the top here, very impressive watching you and the Sportsnet crew kind of put together quality broadcasts through the most difficult circumstances possible. As a ball fan, it's appreciated.
Well, not only this year, but I think we have to go back over the last year and a half to 2 years. The people behind the scenes get all the credit because even last year being based for 64 broadcasts, the 2 exhibition games, the 60-game season, and then the 2 playoff games, anything that we had a question about, anything we had a concern about, any problem that we had was addressed immediately. So hats off to the people behind the scenes, from leadership to the people crawling under the desk,
Sure.
And shaking up the dust bunnies to make sure our video and our audio, and hopefully on the consumer end, on the receiver and earbuds, speakers, wherever we were bringing you Blue Jays baseball last year specifically, was enjoyable as possible. And then this year with a number of different hurdles, it's really impressive how many people it takes to lift one broadcast off the ground. So, the forward-facing people that you see, Dan Schulman, Pat Tabler, Buck Martinez, Arash, and Hazel, I mean, they're the best in the business. They really are. Blue Jay fans are absolutely spoiled, and I'm thrilled to be part of it. But the crew behind the scenes is just as good to make sure that the things, and they care so much. So, really, hats off to them.
Yeah, well, broadcasting is far more like baseball than people know. It's a team sport, right?
It really is, and I don't think people realize this. From Blue Jay Central all the way to the final out, how many people are involved and how many people really care. And it is a team effort. If one person is late to a meeting or responding to an email or getting back to a producer, or director, or whoever, it really disrupts the whole thing. So we try to keep it as well-oiled as possible in a day where things happen at a moment's notice and on short notice. A lot of times, like the COVID ripple effects just over a week ago, it's Oscar Hernandez and the Blue Jays going through contact tracing.
Yeah.
All that news started to break pretty late. So it feels like a fire drill in a lot of ways to get the most up-to-date information to the people as they flip on their television, wondering why the lineup looks like it looks like, or why Lourdes Gurriel Jr. is jogging down the line mid-game because of his reaction to a COVID vaccine. So all those things, it's people working in concert trying to bring you the right information, not just accurate, but the right information in a timely fashion.
Well, it's been wild because a lot of your crew is scattered throughout. I mean, the studio in Toronto and then throughout the United States. And then you're the man on the ground in Dunedin. What has it been like for you to be kind of the eyes and ears and one of the only people watching this team live this year?
You know what? Honestly, for me, it feels normal and the way that it should be handled and operate. Because through spring training, I was fortunate enough to call, and Buck and I actually carpooled together the entire spring training camp. So, we saw literally every pitch of spring training. And that was a great luxury because you got to see Santiago Espinal and how well he's performed and he's gotten better. A lot of people were surprised Jonathan Davis makes the opening day roster. We're not. Watching Jonathan Davis perform, Jonathan Davis was better than Breivik Valera. And at the end of the day, it was nice to see the Blue Jays take the best people. Francisco Liriano, a lot of people thought was a lock to make that roster. Tim Meza, just by the eye test, was throwing the ball better than a couple of the guys that were kind of on the fringes. So, for me to be here and do what I love and be interacting with the athletes, with the coaches, with people in the front office in a safe parameter, that's what makes our insight. That's what makes our broadcast that much better. So for me, it was important to be here and important to see every game, let alone every pitch, because I want to be able to relay what I'm seeing accurately and do it with more than an educated guess. So, I'm again very fortunate to be down here and really provide the insight that this job demands, because this job, especially in baseball, where so much changes day in and day out, we invest a lot of time being around the ballpark and at the ballpark. This is the only way to do it. This is really the only way to do it. Not that it can't be done well. And you're right. We've got a truck full of about 70 people behind the scenes, from camera operators to the technicians to the people in the truck, and almost mirroring that then in the Toronto studios. And keep in mind, there's whoever the opponent for the Blue Jays is, there's another 50 to 70 people on the other end. So you've got this mass of people trying to all make it work in concert together. So it really takes a lot of people to get it done. And fortunately, once we now have this regular season arriving, at least the three of us are here. Buck, Tabby, and myself. At least we're here when the Blue Jays are at home, and we don't have to be confined to the studio setting.
Which is great, especially for the viewer, obviously. And it's interesting because beside the fact that you're needing to deal with the obstacles that a pandemic presents a broadcast season, you've also shifted from radio play-by-play to television and kind of the man on the ground in Dunedin there. What has that transition been like for you?
You know what? It's an opportunity for me to display more skills. To be quite honest with you, I've had a lot of TV background working in the United States prior to latching on with the Blue Jays, but in the last 3+ years, I've done a lot of TV with the studio show on Blue Jays Central, some post-game stuff, a lot of digital content. So for me, it's a different way to deliver my insight and information versus being in the broadcast booth and weaving it in with the play-by-play. I'm very much integrated into the broadcast, way more than I ever thought I would be, to be honest with you. But, Rob Corte, Dave Tredgett, and Doug Walton, who kind of came up with this idea, since I'm here, to have this sort of, yes, man on the ground, man on the scene feature, part of Blue Jay Central, but can we take it a step further and add insight or baseball knowledge to what Buck and Tabby are already bringing you within the game. And so there are some human interest elements that we were able to weave in here at the start of the year. There's some other things that I may notice just by being at field level. There are other things that I'm able to pick up over the course of a broadcast, or even in the course of the day when they're locked in doing their own thing, to gain people added insight. And most recently, for example, when the Blue Jays added Anthony Castro, when Teoscar went on the COVID-19 list, this was a free audition. And the Blue Jays made the roster move. They really don't address why they make roster moves. But for me, just knowing through spring training, the fact that they wanted to get extra looks at Anthony Castro, they like his arm, would his stuff play in the regular season, this was a perfect opportunity. So I was able to bring that to Buck and Tabby, and they can expand, on why that's important. And the fact that the Blue Jays didn't have to take somebody off the 40-man roster. So all these things, we want to make a complete broadcast. Yes, we want to bring you the up-to-date and passionate Blue Jays information, but we also want to bring you the broadcast and why it's important with these little nuances within each game too.
And that is one thing I wanted to talk to you about, because you are on the ground there and you do see those nuances up close and personal. I wanted to talk clubhouse culture for a second. And I know that this is a subject that, some people feel it's a really big deal. Some people feel its importance is maybe a little overstated. I'm curious where you stand on the importance of good team culture. And again, you're up close with this Blue Jays club. What is your sense of the team chemistry this year?
Well, the team chemistry is great. Specifically on this year, the team chemistry is fantastic. There's cheerleaders, there's rah-rah moments, there's hilarious moments. There have been some just on the field great moments, period. Where does clubhouse culture, for me, what's the record? How many games are you winning? Because that helps with clubhouse culture a lot. Now, there are some personalities that have been in that Blue Jay clubhouse in the past that aren't exactly glowing or outgoing personalities. So where is the importance level, and where you're trying to get? Do you want to breed wins and losses? Are you more important? Is it more important in the mind of the front office or with management or even in that clubhouse, to keep things light and energetic despite the wins and losses? That was way more important the last 2 years because there's a lot of pressure. There's a lot of pressure with young players asked to do things maybe ahead of schedule with a lot of these guys. And that they're going to be overmatched in some situations, right? And that's been really, really well documented. If you have a very salty atmosphere, it becomes hard and not enjoyable to go to work. It doesn't even become enjoyable to be around the team, to be honest with you. And there are still days where last year, 2 years ago now, there were just some days that I didn't want to go to the clubhouse. And you know what? Those guys didn't want me in the clubhouse either. Yeah. So we just, we wring our hands of an in clubhouse assignment for that day, and they get a break, I get a break. And I know other colleagues will operate the same way sometimes, but overall, what promotes winning? If you've got the alpha male in the clubhouse that is kind of the guy that's driving the ship and keeping people accountable and forcing everybody's hand and keeping them on edge. If that results in wins, that's great. If it doesn't, that becomes old real quick.
Right.
So, right now I see a really, really nice balance of excitement, of discipline, of communication from top to bottom. And that's really encouraging, only because it'll probably have its ripple effects for years to come because of that too. And that only builds the chemistry that we're watching.
And I'm curious what you think, because I know that with this team, and I know this is one thing we talk about a lot on the show, is that people forget how young they are. Just the way that the seasons have broken down the last 3 years, right? Some of these guys were called up in 2019 mid-season, shortened season in 2020. I mean, Bo Bichette's a great example. Here's a guy who has only played 90 games, maybe even just under that with the Jays, but it feels like he's been with the team 3 years. So I'm curious who you've seen big steps forward from this year in particular, and who are those leadership guys in the clubhouse?
Well, who have I seen the biggest growth from? I mean, it's easy to pinpoint Vladimir Guerrero Jr.
Yeah.
And where he was to where he didn't want to be to where he is right now. And as we sit here and do this conversation, Vladimir Guerrero Jr. will play in his 200th Major League game tonight.
Wow.
In that opening game in Boston. So, and you're right. Bo Bichette, he's had injuries in his rookie season. He had the injury last year. He's just at, just under 90 games in his Major League career. So these guys are young in terms of how long they've been on the planet, and they're young in terms of how many games they've actually played at the Major League level. And that goes for Danny Jansen. That goes for Kevin Biggio. And that goes, honestly, for Teoscar Hernandez. To even have the success that he had, he's been, up and down in the years prior in terms of where he's been at AAA in the major leagues. He's been up and down in performance, and, he's had injuries. So there are a rather large group of these players that are still kind of figuring out who they are as major league players and what works well for them. And keep in mind, organizations and scouts and people behind the scenes are trying to figure out kind of who they are and what kind of major league player they are at the same time. And I don't want to leave Lourdes Gurriel Jr. out of that either.
Yeah.
He's made. And Rowdy Tellez. I mean, the longer we sit here and the more we talk about it, the longer that list gets, right, with all these young players. So it's pretty amazing, that the Blue Jays have been able to have success overall. And I think, the last year is deemed a success, the way that they played, and the excitement that they had, and the growth that they've had this
100%.
year as well. So it's a good thing. It really is a good thing. So Vladdy, for me, takes the cake in terms of who has advanced the most. Because he's been able to do it offensively, and with the change in the body, his defense is light years in my mind from where he was a year ago. There's still some mechanical things to clean up, and he can get better playing first base. But
no, he truly looks like a different player. Like he looks like a different player at first base.
Because he is. I mean, he is a different player at first base, and I've said this before. Vladimir Guerrero Jr. is extremely talented, and he's jovial. He loves being at the ballpark, and the play that you're seeing right now is a confident Vladimir Guerrero Jr. And when you combine those two things, he becomes a very dangerous Vladimir Guerrero Jr., and we are getting the fruits of all of that right here at the start of the season. So it's really enjoyable to watch. So, follow up on your who's the leader. There's some quiet leadership with Kevin and Marcus Simeon. There's a little bit more pom-pom raising and a lot of communication and talking that you get from George Springer. And you may see with Bo Bichette and kind of that hair on fire, frustration at times, also keeping his teammates accountable. There's Randall Gritchick. He has way more on-field personality in the last year and a half than what he had in the first 2 years with the Toronto Blue Jays. And things are going well for Gritch right now, too. I hope that continues. So you're seeing a lot of it. And I think that comes from players that have a little bit more street cred, if you will, than some of the guys, even though they may be new to the organization, they have a resume that's a little bit deeper, and they're allowed to have that. And, unfortunately, we don't get the clubhouse access, and I'm only seeing half of the action at field level, but you see it. And you see kind of the meld with the personalities right now, and a lot of the communication too. A lot of the communication, and I think everybody right now is kind of rowing the boat in the right direction because, with young teams, if they are successful and you can see that growth without a lot of the pressure, as I mentioned, it can become salty very quickly. There's position battles happening as we speak. First base, catcher. There's some outfield questions that maybe by the end of this week are going to have to be resolved. There's young guys that are having a lot of success. Things can turn quickly if the wins and losses aren't there, but thankfully the competitiveness of this team is way ahead of where things could turn quickly if if there aren't competitive at bats, competitive ball games, and in the end wins.
You, Ben, have a very unique experience with this Toronto Blue Jays team. You were the play-by-play announcer for the Bison in Buffalo for 11 years before going to the show in 2018. And you saw some of these guys with the Bisons long before any Blue Jays fans had a chance to. What's that been like to almost graduate to the big leagues at the same time as some of these guys like Rowdy and Teoscar? And has it given you a little bit of a different perspective watching players in general, knowing how much they can grow in certain times?
Sure. I think it gives me a perspective because that there's a level behind the big leagues where guys are trying to find whatever it is, from a pitching standpoint, from a position standpoint, offense standpoint. There's that cusp where players are trying to find it, and whether or not a veteran guy can get here and make an impact, or the blossoming prospect that's maybe on the rise. Is he putting together enough of a push that he can be an everyday major leaguer, or is he going to be somebody that's on the fringes? And you mentioned Rowdy, and you mentioned Danny Jansen, and a handful of the guys that are currently on this roster, but I go all the way back to 2013 with direct connection to the Blue Jays and Marcus Stroman, Aaron Sanchez, guys that coming up the bullpen, Kevin Pillar, Anthony Gose, Ryan Goins. It's a pretty long list of kind of prospects. And then the guys that are also coming down to AAA on Major League Rehab. So, there's a comfort, and I think that comfort won in recognition of Ben, the guy that was in Buffalo or is in Buffalo back in those years. But also, I haven't changed the way that I do my job. Buffalo to the big leagues. My access is different. The way the days are constructed are much different than the Buffalo setting or any minor league setting for that matter. And my asks might be a little different because I wore a couple of different hats in Buffalo than I do now with the Blue Jays. But I think the way that I treated the players when they were in Buffalo and the way that I treat the players and staff members now in Toronto or Dunedin or wherever we're at, that same level of professionalism and respect to them doing their job and how they operate their day, and me not getting in the way of that, and having a respect for everything that goes in to the process of them being the best Toronto Blue Jay that they can be is why it's a pretty comfortable conversation or interaction that I've got with these guys now.
Well, it is obvious that there is a relationship there. I did want to bring up one thing because I'm curious about the story behind how Rowdy started rubbing your head for good luck.
So, I have a challenged hairline to begin with. So, and Rowdy is well on his way. He'll admit that. So, back in 2017, I want to say. Is where we really had a problem area here starting to develop. So, just we're around the clubhouse, and when you work every day in baseball, you spend just way too many hours around the same people. So, when the season ends, you get to choose your friends, right? But when the clubhouse is open during the regular season, you might as well be friendly. You might as well have a good time. So, it started as a jovial, like just head tap at times. Not that it was an occurrence every day.
Yeah.
But in 2018, when Rowdy came up, in 2018, when he first came up, he'd do the head tap or like one of these infrequently in the clubhouse, sometimes around the cage, wherever the day was. 2019, more of the same, but a little bit less of that because it wasn't the greatest year for Rowdy. So, again, some of the playfulness, and this goes to the clubhouse culture and atmosphere, right? Some of that playfulness is removed. So, again, I'm not sticking my head in Rowdy's locker saying, hey, you better do your head tap, buddy. I would never broach that. This is always something that's predicated by Rowdy in this scenario. So, we never saw him. Outside the shutdown, moving forward through summer camp, through the regular season, and how we were doing the broadcast in 2020. And Rowdy had, in my mind, a really, really good year, even though the injury. And we never had that human contact and interaction with Rowdy. And then in this offseason, I got an opportunity to go over to the player development complex and kind of rekindle those relationships. And you just pick up with some of these guys right where you left off. So, Rowdy in the interaction, and then Rowdy fast forward to spring training, and then he walked over from the batting cage one day. He said, "Bring it in," and I was like, "What?" And he reaches through the net, behind home plate. He cups his paw right on my dome here, and he does the head tap again, kind of like he's cracking an egg. So that was the start, and he broke the offer that night.
Yeah.
And the next day, he said, "You better be same place tomorrow." Okay. So and listen, I'm doing my job pretty much the same way every day. So I'm behind the cage. I'm trying to interact with players from a safe and social distance, coaches, and just observe more than anything. I'm observing. And that day, too, I saw George Springer for the first time take live reps during batting practice. First time since the quad injury that he'd been back out on the field. So while that's the main point of my day, the story becomes Rowdy tapping my head. So then, Rowdy gets 2 hits that night. I think maybe he homered that night. I don't remember. But and then day 3 of that last day of the Yankees series is when I don't know, maybe we were 4 or 5 days into this whole thing anyway. But the cameras caught on this time.
Right.
So the cameras were ready. They caught me at the end of the dugout. Rowdy comes over right before the game. He does the head tap, and he gets a base hit that day. So I cannot confirm or deny the fact that the Ben Wagner cardboard cutout made the trip to Kansas City, Boston, and then on to Tampa. And let's get daily head taps in my human contact absence.
Right.
That's amazing.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. Now, obviously, yesterday, an off day for the Blue Jays, which means that Blue Jays Twitter was going wild with all of the concerns that people have for this team. So what I wanted to do here is I took 5 of the concerns that were the most prevalent, and I wanted to read them off to you, and then you can kind of say if you are actually concerned or not, and you can rate it. 5 being incredibly concerned, 1 being you're not concerned at all, and then you can either calm us all down or tell us we should be in fact panicking. You all right with that?
Great. I get to stir the pot. Okay,
That's
here we go.
Right. That's right. Ben the pot stirrer here. All right. So number 1, there are currently too many left-handed starters in this rotation?
Well, present day, I don't think that they're going to use, as many lefties as what they can use. But major concern is 5. Less concern, I'm going to put it at a 2.
Okay.
Because Hyun-Jin Ryu is fantastic. And Hyun-Jin Ryu is going to do, and he's proven this year that he can continue to do whatever he wants to do with every pitch.
Yeah.
Steven Matz has been a godsend. He's a storyline that I said early in spring training might be the most important storyline to watch, along with Robbie Ray. Robbie Ray was a little inconsistent, but he recognized why he was inconsistent his last time in Kansas City and still walked the tightrope and really wasn't that harmed.
Yeah.
Would I like to see somebody in between Robbie Ray and Steven Matz? Sure. But right now, with the way that the injury situation is in the Blue Jays, these are the best guys you've got. And so far, they have not pitched themselves into a situation where you need to be concerned. So that's why I'm going to rank it at a 2.
Yeah, a few of these are ones where I feel like time will work this stuff out, especially with the injuries the Jays are going through right now. So the other one, and you mentioned him, but and honestly, anyone who watched that game Sunday, I mean, it was an exercise in stress management, right? Like, Robbie Ray is what I'm going to mention here. So Robbie Ray is who people are concerned about, and curious what you think on him.
2, Robbie Ray in spring training was unbelievable. He's made mechanical adjustments. He understands a new philosophy on how to get things done versus where he was. And I think this year you're going to see more of a Robbie Ray like the 2018, 2019 Robbie Ray versus kind of that poor strike zone management Robbie Ray. Mm-hmm. Again, he's made some adjustments. He hit it off with Pete Walker. There is a absolute fact because of the progress that he made last year, why he signed so early with the Blue Jays, and because he's comfortable with the people that are around him. And whether it's working with Alejandro Kirk or not, that doesn't matter to me. Yeah. It's about who Robbie Ray is on the mound. So I'm really not concerned, and I wish people saw more of Robbie Ray from camp to even what they now just have in the front of their mind with that Kansas City and the erratic strike zone. Those are for me. Those are things that get ironed out.
I mean, in all honesty, even though it was a hard game to watch, Robbie Ray impressed me because he did not have any of his pitches. Like, nothing was working for him, and still he got through 5 innings without blowing up. It was super impressive.
You make 25 to 30 starts a year, probably in 5 of those, you're going to have exactly that. You've got to figure it out.
Yeah.
Is it one pitch? Is it a couple of pitches? Is it a mechanical adjustment that you have to make on the fly on top of the mound? You just get to a point. You've got to figure it out. And Robbie Ray, while kind of walking that tightrope, was able to just survive enough where you didn't have to blow out the bullpen.
So 1 to 5, your concern on our catching isn't good enough.
That's a 4. That's a 4
okay.
for me. That's a 4 for me right now. The book is a lot thicker on Alejandro Kirk this year, and between being the new flash in the pan and this guy that's got he does have great hands, bat to ball skills. Don't get me wrong, but he's being pitched differently this year. Danny Jansen has yet to figure it out at the major league level for somebody that hit his way level by level in the minor leagues. And early on, he put a lot of pressure on himself to improve defensively. And this is a combination for where the overall ability of the catchers, let alone the philosophy of the catchers, is now combining, and it's being exposed. Guys are running wild on the Toronto Blue Jays right now. They can't throw anybody out. You're not getting a lot of production, offensively. I will say this year is a much more fluid sequence, regardless of who is on the mound, in terms of game calling, than what it was last year. So that is one thing, but overall, I'm at a 4 with the catching concern.
Well, it's an interesting situation the Jays are in because depth-wise, when it comes to guys that are coming up the system, the Jays' catching system is very deep, but they don't really have anyone who's doing it right now.
No, I think, the next level I know would be Riley Adams, but, his swing doesn't look like it's going to translate right now. And he's a big guy, kind of like a Matt Wieters build,
Right.
in terms of that structure, Tyler Flowers, kind of that big body build behind the plate. But I haven't seen a lot, offensively for him that's going to be a problem solver. The next guy for me is Gabby Moreno.
Yeah.
I talk to people around the organization. They are by far and away the most high on Gabby Moreno than any of what started as 5 catchers on the 40-man roster and is now down to 4.
Okay, fan concerns. Kevin Biggio can't play third base and can't hit a fastball.
Those are 2 different arguments for me. Kevin Biggio can play third base. I don't know who started floating this out that he doesn't have the arm to play third base. Yeah. He's got the arm to play third base. I've watched it. I watched the throws from my position, and I paid a lot of attention to it during early work, during a lot of the in-game activity for Kevin. It's a true on the line. He's made a focus. He's got natural tail on his throws anyway, and he's changed his whole demeanor in driving the ball corner to corner than what he was playing second base, because he didn't have to when he played second base. And he makes sure that he gets on top of the ball, and he's done certain process to do that. And I've asked, and the coaches are just sick of talking to me about this too. Can Kevin Biggio play third base? Yeah, Kevin Biggio can play anywhere he wants. I wish they'd just pick a position and leave Kevin Biggio there. I think that would go really, really well. Kevin Biggio does have trouble with the fastball, and he's getting beat with heat. He's not the only player that's getting beat with heat either. No. And the major league pitchers are really, really good. And everybody now has a stable full of guys that throw 98, as Kevin Cash loves to say. And guess what? The Red Sox have more of them now this year, and they're going to Tampa Bay next. So you're going to see a lot of velo, and you're going to continue to see guys get pounded inside. Kevin's got to either lay off the high velo and figure out how to defend a pitch against the velo, so he gets a mistake, or he can sit breaking ball like we've seen Lourdes Gurriel do, because that's a guy that's made the adjustment. He gets beat with velo, so he's sitting breaking ball, and he's able to do whatever he wants with it. Flick it to a gap, pull it down the line. He's a really good breaking ball hitter. So there's a lot of those are 2 separate arguments for me. So concerned about the velo, you got to be able to hit velo. So that's probably at a 3 or a 4 with Kevin. Can he play third base? I'm going to put that at a 2 because of when was the last time you've been like over the moon excited about a Blue Jay third baseman?
Besides Donaldson, right?
Was he that great, or did Justin Smoke bail him out a lot too? Let's remember, with the, I'm not going to take I'm not going to take anything away from JD, and especially in that run through 2015, 2016, he was a little bit different of a player. When I kind of started to see him daily, and the struggle with the throws and everything else from 2018 and then to the start of 2019 as well. So, there have been good third basemen. There are guys that can pick it, but there hasn't been that meld of third baseman play yet. But I'm not, Kevin's gotten really pretty good at third base, and he's handled the backhand. He's trying to make bare hand throws. He's working with Bo on that range too. So there's a lot of encouraging thing about Kevin Biggio playing third base.
Well, I felt the same way. I felt his defensive capabilities at third have been way blown out of proportion for him not being able to do it. He seems to have been fine. He makes a few mistakes, but he's new at the position too. So I don't know.
Newer with the position, and listen, the Blue Jays move guys around all the time, and they position people pretty deep at third base, and that's by design, and they want him off the line at third base. That's by design. His athleticism, for guys that just don't pull the ball over the bag anymore. So that's why the Blue Jays are comfortable pushing back a third baseman, keeping him off the line, and sometimes just asking natural athletic ability to take over. If you got a range to your right, make a nice backhand, you're already set up, cock back and make the throw. And he has the ability to do all of those things.
Honestly, Ben, thank you so much for taking the time. I know that you're out of time here, but we do appreciate you coming on the show and sharing your insight here.